If you look at a map of the world today, Christianity is everywhere. It's shaped laws, cultures, entire continents.
It's massive.
But if you rewind the clock to the very beginning, it's almost invisible. Just this tiny, quiet movement inside the giant Roman Empire.
It's a really incredible story of contrast, isn't it? You have
Yeah.
this huge, powerful, centralized empire, and then this new idea spreading just by word of mouth from person to person.
So let's get into that. How does a group that small even get started? How does it gain any traction at all in a place like Rome?
Well, at first it had to be secret.
Mm,
They'd meet quietly in private homes, share a meal, pray together.
nothing threatening about that.
Not at all. But the radical part was who was in the room. Roman society had all these strict layers. Citizens, slaves, rich, poor. This new movement just ignored all of that.
So everyone was welcome.
Everyone. The poor, women, slaves. And if you were at the very bottom of that society, that wasn't just an idea. It was a community that actually accepted you right now.
That had to be a huge draw, a real sense of belonging that you couldn't find anywhere else.
It was a powerful social magnet. And then you have leaders like the Apostle Paul who were just brilliant networkers.
Right, he didn't just stay in one place.
No, he used the amazing Roman road system, which, was built for soldiers and merchants, to travel all over the empire, to
Yeah.
Corinth, to Ephesus, all these major cities.
So they were using the empire's own infrastructure to spread their message.
Exactly. And he wrote letters, constant letters. These kept all those little scattered communities connected and on the same page. It was like building a spiritual internet with pen and paper.
Which is fascinating because that well-organized spiritual network very quickly becomes a huge political problem for Rome.
It does.
Why? Why did this group, focused on God and the afterlife, become such a massive headache for the most powerful empire on earth?
It really boils down to a fundamental clash of worldviews. For the Romans, religion wasn't really about personal belief. It was more like a civic duty. Yes, a contract with the gods. They called it the Pax Deorum, the peace of the gods. If everyone did their part, performed the public sacrifices.
Then the gods would keep Rome safe and prosperous.
Precisely. And that duty went all the way to the top. The emperor himself was seen as, well, almost divine. He had to be honored.
Okay, so the Romans were fine with new gods, right? They added them all the time.
Oh, yeah. They were very flexible on that. Add another god to the list, no problem. But Christians came in with this exclusivity. They insisted on only one god.
And that meant they wouldn't worship the Roman gods.
And, crucially, they wouldn't offer that little sacrifice to the emperor. They refused to honor him as a god.
So for a Roman official, watching a Christian refuse to toss a tiny pinch of incense on an altar, that wasn't just a religious choice.
No, it was seen as disloyalty, even treason. You were breaking the contract. You were putting the entire empire at risk.
You were inviting disaster.
That's how they saw it. This refusal could bring down the anger of the gods on everyone.
And that fear, that made Christians an easy target, didn't it? Because they were meeting in secret, people were already suspicious.
Absolutely. Rumors started flying. People heard they were talking about eating flesh and drinking blood in their ceremonies.
Misunderstanding the communion, the bread and wine.
Exactly. So rumors of cannibalism started. And because they rejected all the Roman gods, they were actually called atheists.
Which is so strange to us, but in their context, an atheist was someone who just didn't respect the gods that kept the state safe.
That's right. And all this suspicion and fear created the perfect storm for the first big crisis. The Great Fire of Rome in 64 AD.
A huge fire devastated the city, and the emperor at the time was Nero, who was not popular.
Not at all. And a lot of people suspected he started the fire himself, maybe to clear land for a new palace. He was in deep trouble.
He needed a scapegoat fast.
And there was this small, weird, misunderstood group that everyone was already suspicious of, the Christians.
So he blames them.
He blames them. And this is the first time the Roman government officially targets Christians. It wasn't about their beliefs, really. It was a political move to save his own skin.
And the punishments were horrific.
Truly awful. They were used as entertainment. Some were covered in animal skins and torn apart by dogs. Others were coated in tar and set on fire to be used as human torches in Nero's gardens.
It's unbelievable, and that set a really dangerous precedent for the next couple of centuries.
It did. But for a long time, there wasn't one single law that said Christianity is illegal. Persecution was often local. It depended on the mood of the current emperor or the local governor.
So it was unpredictable.
Very. But the legal system usually offered a way out. If you were accused of being a Christian, you were given a chance to recant.
To take it back, what did that actually involve?
Usually something very simple, very public. You might have to offer a pinch of incense to a statue of the emperor or say a quick prayer to the Roman gods.
They didn't care what you actually believed in your heart.
Not really. They just cared about the public performance of loyalty.
Mm.
If you refused that simple act, that was defiance. And defiance meant punishment, often death.
But so many of them didn't recant, and that's where this idea of martyrdom comes from.
Right, the word martyr comes from Greek, and it just means a witness. They saw themselves as witnesses to the truth, even if it meant dying. For them, it was the ultimate act of faith.
You have to wonder, though, didn't the Romans realize this was backfiring? These public executions where people faced death so bravely, it was actually inspiring others, wasn't it?
It was a massive miscalculation. They expected fear to stamp it out, but instead, people in the crowds would see the peace and conviction of the martyrs and be impressed. They'd become curious.
So the courage of the people being executed became a kind of advertisement for the faith.
It became their most powerful missionary tool. There's a famous saying from the time, "The blood of the martyrs was the seed of the church."
That courage really prepared them for what came next. Because as the Roman Empire started to have serious problems, wars, a bad economy emperor started looking for someone to blame again.
And they decided the gods must be angry. The solution: get everyone back to the traditional rituals. Force them.
This led to the first really organized empire-wide persecutions.
Right. The first big one was under Emperor Decius around the year 250. He issued an edict, an official order.
What did it say?
It said that every single citizen in the entire empire had to perform a public sacrifice to the gods.
Uh-huh.
And you had to get a certificate to prove you did it. A little slip of paper called a libellus.
Wow. A mandatory loyalty test with paperwork. That's terrifyingly efficient.
It was, because there was no hiding. A Christian couldn't get that certificate without betraying their faith.
So what happened?
Many refused and were imprisoned or killed. But many others gave in. Some bribed officials for a fake certificate. It caused a huge crisis within the church later on about what to do with the people who had lapsed.
And even that wasn't the worst of it.
No. The final, most brutal attempt was the Great Persecution under Emperor Diocletian, starting in 303 AD.
What made his so different?
Decius just wanted everyone to comply. Diocletian wanted to completely annihilate the church. He aimed to destroy its entire infrastructure.
So what did they do?
His orders were to tear down church buildings, to find and burn every sacred book they could. High-ranking Christians in the government lost their jobs and rights. The clergy, priests, and bishops were hunted down specifically.
Burning the books. That's an attempt to erase their memory, their whole history.
It was an attempt to wipe them out completely. But even after all that, the Christian network was just too big, too well organized. They couldn't stamp it out.
So on a daily basis, how did people survive that? How did you know who to trust?
They developed codes, secret symbols. The most famous one is the fish symbol. You could sketch it in the dirt to see if someone else was a believer without saying a word.
And the community itself must have been so important.
It was everything. They pooled resources to help the families of people who were in prison. They had messengers to keep communication lines open. They'd sometimes meet in underground catacombs, which were mainly burial sites. The church acted like its own support system when the whole world was against them.
And all of that strength, that resilience, it sets the stage for one of the biggest turning points in history.
The biggest, really.
How do you go from being public enemy number one to, well, to being embraced by the state?
The whole story pivots on one man, Constantine the Great. He's a Roman general fighting for control of the empire. And the story goes that right before a huge battle, he sees a vision in the sky.
A Christian symbol.
Yes, the Chi Rho, the first two letters of Christ's name in Greek. He puts it on his soldiers' shields, he wins a massive victory, and he gives credit to the Christian God.
And soon after, in 313 AD, he issues the Edict of Milan.
Which is a complete game changer. It doesn't just stop the persecution, it grants religious freedom to everyone. And it orders that all the property that was taken from Christians be returned.
So overnight, Christianity goes from illegal to legal and protected.
And not just protected, favored. Constantine starts pouring money into building huge, beautiful churches called basilicas.
So they're legal, they're favored. But there's one last step. How do they become the official religion of the whole empire?
That happens a bit later under Emperor Theodosius in the year 380. He issues an edict that just flat out makes Christianity the official state religion.
A complete 180.
Total reversal. Now, state money is used to promote Christianity, Pagan temples are closed or turned into churches. Bishops become powerful political advisors to the emperor. The persecuted have become the establishment.
Looking back on that whole struggle, what's the lasting impact of those centuries of persecution?
Well, being under threat forced them to become incredibly organized. They built a structure, a hierarchy that was so strong it actually survived the fall of the Roman Empire itself.
And this whole story, this idea of standing up for your conscience against the power of the state, that has echoed through history.
It really has. It's a foundational story for Western ideas about religious freedom and individual rights. It just shows how this small group, starting in secret, managed to endure and in the end reshape the world.
An amazing journey from a whispered rumor to a world-shaping force. Thank you for walking us through that.
My pleasure.
Good luck with your studies.